My name is Robert Martellacci. I'm the president and founder of MindShare Learning Technology and MindShare Workspace, Canada's first small located co-working space. I'm honored to be moderating today's panel that will be most thought-provoking and challenging and looking into the future of smart cities and sustainable learning communities. The session topic is designing sustainable lifelong learning communities to nurture smart city ecosystems. We've got an amazing panel of presenters here who are highly connected and passionate about their craft. I want to introduce to my left, first off, Shawn, who is the Director of Information Technology and Chief Information Officer for the City of Mississauga. He led the Smart City Master Plan initiative that was recently endorsed by City Council. So let's have a round of applause for Shawn. Thanks for joining us. He and I did the 20-minute workout coming from the south parking lot. It was great. Very invigorating. Catherine Chamberlain is with Erin Mills Connects. And Catherine is a parent and also now leading the charge at the Erin Mills Connects, which you'll learn more about this learning community. In my space that I have in Erin Mills Town Center, I connected with this group that's just a fascinating organization that you'll be excited to learn more about. And Mary Nanavati is Mary Nanavati is the co-founder of Erin Mills Connects and the co-founder of FlourishCo. So she's a former principal of John Fraser High School, which was and is one of the top performing schools in all Peel. So there's a story to be told here, and I'll set the scene, and I'm going to give you a little background on myself, and I'll have the rest of you also kind of talk a little bit about your passion and why you're here. So I have, they talk about multiple careers in the future. I'm one of the baby boomers that was ahead of my time. I think I'm on my 5th career. And so I was a university administrator, played hockey at York. Don't hold that against me, the cross-town rival. I became a sport information director, University Business Alliance director, and Kevin O'Leary's company lured me away to launch the learning company. Some of you may recall Reader Rabbit, Kid Picks, Oregon Trail, and some of those cool products. I did his startup and took a lot of the positives from him, what I learned in that organization, and I launched my MindShare Learning Company. And then we pivoted and launched a co-working space for startups, and we collaborate a lot with UTM and the IQ. I'm on the advisory board there, so I'm honored to be here. And so I'm going to pass it over to Shawn to just say a few words about yourself. And
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. And so I don't know if this is on or not, but I've known Rob for a while. And actually, we launched our first engagement for the Is that better?
Yeah.
Hello? So I've known Rob for a while. And actually, we launched our first Smart City Master Plan engagement at the MindShare Workspace along with Councillor Sato and Councillor Starr. And the reason we did that is we felt it was really important to be out in the community and launch in a public space. So that's the most recent part of my background. But starting with the city, I actually started more often public safety and actually replaced the three fire departments, Brampton, Cal, and Mississauga's fire dispatch system from a mainframe, which you probably have never heard of or seen before, but to a newer technology. So I was living at the Peel Regional Police Headquarters for quite some time doing that. Then I was charged with transforming the city's online services. So I spent a couple of years putting all of our services online in the early 2000s. Then I shifted gears to customer service. I was the city's first director of customer service. Wrote the customer service strategy, implemented that, actually implemented the first policy around accessible customer service. And then I shifted gears again, and actually shifted over to doing a broader portfolio of business services with finance, HR, IT for the corporate services department. So I really got the business side of the city. and then shifted gears again back to IT as becoming the CIO back in 2011, and actually had the city's first IT master plan approved in 2015. And that's really where we declared Smart City as a goal, but also as a bit of a legacy, because we already are a smart city. And so today, IT director and CIO is two jobs. I'm pulled in two directions, so I have to run city operations, make it efficient, make it run 7/24, and the CIO role really is about strategic relationships and community building. So it's an interesting combination as a role.
And that's what you call an innovator's mindset, continually improving, lifelong learning. You're a poster child for that. Okay, so Catherine Chamberlain.
Good morning. Was it better? Okay, yeah, great. Hi, I'm Kathy Chamberlain, and I come to Erin Mills Connects, which is a community collaborative, sort of organically. My kids were at John Fraser Secondary School, and I was on the council, the school council, and this lovely lady here, she said, you know, your neighborhood needs a few more services, and we, people in Erin Mills, really didn't recognize that. And so she started the collaborative called Erin Mills Connects, and then I eventually got involved through the school council. So it's my pleasure to be here and to talk about our collaborative and in the context of sustainability and smart cities.
Mary Nanavati.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here on such a soggy day. Very nice that you're here with us. I have had a very rich and rewarding career thus far, and I started out in the nonprofit sector working for YMCA in both Whitby and in Halifax, and then moved into a very rewarding career in education. And I just recently, this past June, retired from the Peel District School Board. I have about 30 years in education under my belt, both as a classroom teacher, staff developer, and also as a school administrator. Proud to say that I was the principal at two schools, Fletcher's Meadow Secondary School in Northwest Brampton, and then most recently, almost 6 full years at John Fraser Secondary School, which is very close to here in this area. And I think I have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I was so pleased when listening to John Holmberg this morning. Community, education, learning, they all matter. And so I'm hoping that I will be able to bring some of those thoughts into our conversation this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. I like to say it's never been a more exciting time to be in education, with the opportunities and promise that technology-infused pedagogy brings. And now I'm going to enlighten you with and set the scene for our panel in reading the abstract that we constructed. The Smart Cities movement is growing at a rapid pace around the globe. The promise of ubiquitous internet access and AI-focused solutions to enhance the lives of big city residents and reduce traffic congestion is compelling. Vitally important to the Smart Cities movement is nurturing integrated and seamless sustainable learning communities that carries with it essential supports to promote and the notion of seamless lifelong learning in an increasingly complex world. The session will explore global competencies and related skills, the need to think critically and creatively both locally and globally, and the importance of well-being to nurture success through building a thriving community. And building a thriving, smart, sustainable city requires time, alignment, and resources amongst a multitude of stakeholder groups. A key success factor is a highly educated and skilled workforce and connected learning community that nurtures innovation and a lifelong learning mindset. So with that, I want to congratulate Shawn on his recent City Council endorsement of his Smart City Plan. And perhaps you can share what inspired this initiative.
Okay, so thanks, Rob. And so the Smart Cities Challenge that was initiated by the federal government, in a way, was probably the biggest catalyst. So we actually went to our council when it was announced and said, look, there's going to be a challenge across Canada. We recommend actually submitting a submission and doing a lot of stakeholder engagement to do that. But in parallel, we recommend to do a smart city master plan, because the whole Smart Cities Challenge was great because it raised the conversation across Canada, engaged the private sector, the public sector, and all the community agencies together, which was a great thing. But in the end, there would only be a couple winners. So that really was the impetus. But when Council endorsed the IT Master Plan in 2015, we had declared we were a smart city already. So we had the context and we were well prepared to do that.
So what's at stake?
So I think one of the most important things to address is digital in the public realm. And during the creation of the Smart City Master Plan, we worked a lot with our senior leadership team. And finally, the city manager, Janice Baker, said, Shawn, what's the difference between IT and smart city? And so that, to me, was probably a pretty important moment in the entire engagement, because it really does acknowledge that, you know, traditionally you would have technology to provide services, whether that's in person or online. You fill out forms, you collect data, you process transactions. Smart city is about digital in the public realm, and that's a game changer because you have to build public trust, understand what's needed in the public realm, and you have to engage the public in the process. So to me, that's probably what's at stake, is gaining trust and how you introduce technology into the public realm. And there's all sorts of use cases around the world where it's actually been done successful, but also where it's been very problematic.
It reminds me, thank you for that, it reminds me of a quote from one of the deputy ministers at a conference I was part of in Nova Scotia this summer, where the deputy minister said, innovation happens at the speed of trust. You really have to build that trust before you start moving along to get other people on board and create a movement. So how did you factor in sustainability and lifelong learning and education in the equation of a smart city?
So there's a few sets of principles we'll talk about later on, but I think digital literacy and digital inclusion and accessibility were fundamental principles at the outset. And in the Smart City Master Plan, we said it was a smart city for everyone. And so our partners we established early on were the United Way, the library system, newcomers, recognizing that through the Smart Cities Challenge, the two biggest areas of focus that came up across Canada, not just in Mississauga, was economic and social resilience. And so our submission was about helping those in need and creating opportunity. And the Smart City Master Plan, because it is focused on everyone, really is focused on creating opportunity in the community, creating activation in the community. And so an example would be our Tech in the City, which is our annual hackathon, which actually we partner with UTM in Sheridan and the private sector. And we use our open data sets and our policy to drive engagement and opportunity. So I think sustainability is about continuing learning, but also providing opportunities for people to learn and succeed.
Awesome. Thank you for that. It's a good segue to Erin Mills Connects, a learning community, as I came to know it, uniquely and distinct Erin Mills. And perhaps you can share a bit about the history of Erin Mills Connect. Both Mary and Kathy, you're more than welcome to contribute to that.
Thank you. Erin Mills Connects is based, it was founded in 2016. So we're quite proud of the fact that this little fledgling community organization has really flourished, and it's going to be almost 4 years old. It's based on a model that was actually created in Northwest Brampton. So when I arrived as a principal in 2008 at Fletcher's Meadow Secondary School in Northwest Brampton, there was an organization that had just been created about a year earlier called Brampton Northwest Connects. So the Erin Mills Connects is based on that model that had already existed in Northwest Brampton. And it was a model that brought schools and community organizations, politicians, along with police, library, community centers, together to do in Northwest Brampton to create what they could together collaboratively for children and youth. So it was quite unprecedented that everybody, all the stakeholders in that community came together because it was a very new community at the time. So there was not a lot of infrastructure. And everybody took off their hats, and you saw the public boards coming together, both Catholic and public, all the community organizations, faith groups, parents, everybody working together to say, listen, this is a very new community. What can we do together to benefit children and youth? Fast forward to when I actually arrived here as a principal in 2013 to John Fraser Secondary School. I had looked around in this very mature community and I asked questions. You know, do you have a ratepayers association? Do you have some sort of residents association? What kind of community organizations do you have in this very mature area of Mississauga? Well, lo and behold, there wasn't any, which I found really quite fascinating. And so I had talked a little bit about my experience with Brampton Northwest Connects, and after some time of dialoguing, I was able to work with Kathy and public health nurses and a variety of stakeholders to create Erin Mills Connects in January 2016, and it was definitely based on the model that I had experienced in Northwest Brampton. Kathy?
Thank you for that, Mary. And so you really embrace the notion of it takes a village to raise a child. And so turn it over to Catherine. Perhaps you can share with us who are the stakeholders and how were they invited into the Erin Mills Connects community? What was the process for that?
Again, it's kind of organic. We started off with agencies who served the youth and the parents in the neighborhood, and then it grew to be parents, anybody who was interested in the work that we were doing, especially with youth. So our group now consists of agencies such as United Way, settlement agencies, youth groups such as Erin Mills Youth Center and The Dam, which is started as a homeless preventer, and parents from different councils, educators from the schools in the area, University of Toronto, Mississauga, and a number of other groups. MindShare, Workspace.
Yes, very pleased to be proud
Yeah.
of that. Perhaps you can give context to where Erin Mills Connects is actually located, because not everyone's from this immediate region.
Right here, where this university is. So John Fraser is at Erin Mills Town Center, which is a little bit northwest of here, and the two high schools that are mainly participating in Erin Mills with Erin Mills Connects are side by side, more or less, kitty corner from one another. John Fraser Secondary School and St. Aloysius Gonzaga Secondary School, and then their feeder schools, which are spread out in the probably 2 to 3 kilometer radius. But that doesn't mean that's where we're going to stop. That's where we started.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Mary, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I just want to say that after we're almost 4 years old, and right now we have 170 on our distribution list, and that represents agencies, schools, local politicians, trustees, city councillor, mayor as well. Anybody is invited to be part of Erin Mills Connects, and community leaders. We have some businesses and faith groups, and then on top of that, we also have 150 parents who are on our distribution list as well. So right now, at this present time, we have over 300 on our distribution list. And again, as Robert mentioned, the idea is that to effect change, it requires all stakeholders. Sustainability is a team sport. So how do you create the team? Who should be on the team? And I think that's a really important question to ask, because you can't do it on your own. And when it comes to broader community issues, which we'll talk about shortly, it really is a team effort, and that's what Erin Mills Connects recognizes, that when it comes to working with children and youth, it's a community issue. It's not the issue of any one agency, any one school. We all have a role to play, and what can we create together, tapping into all our strengths.
I love the notion of sustainability being a team sport. Could I quote you on that, right? Back to Shawn Slack from the city of Mississauga. Shawn, what's in store for residents of the city of Mississauga with the rollout of the Smart City Master Plan? I know that's a big loaded question, but maybe you can give us the high-level perspective.
Yeah, so it's so the Smart City Master Plan, I mentioned continuous improvement. It is a master plan. It's not a set of initiatives necessarily, but it's supported by 6 goals. And it really was to ground the fact that we're not looking at technology as the driver. We're looking at people and place in the community. So the goals are people, so focusing on people, focus on economy, focus on living, focus on mobility, focusing on environment, and then focusing on government being efficient. And so each of those goals are actually have metrics that we're going to measure against. And the example I would use around focus on people is we're just launching our laptop lending program, which is an expansion of that in the library system. We made a commitment to grow that by 1,000. So 1,000 laptops that would get loaned out, and it's a partnership with United Way and newcomers. And what we're doing is making sure that people don't have access to technology can get that. So that's an example of how an initiative would tie back to the goals. The Smart City Framework is about governance. So internally, we've developed a process. So any initiative across the city, we have a set of eyes and a lens and a process that actually looks at what new technology is going to be introduced, whether it's in the public realm or whether it's to deliver service, so we can understand and anticipate the impacts on the community, data, and privacy. And that actually will be supported by new policies. So we just finished doing our data and data privacy sessions with the public. It was a public consultation period. We're going to use those to develop principles that will actually inform the new policy. And actually this November, November 30th, we're doing our hackathon, Tech in the City, and we're actually going to be putting out and publishing our draft principles and the draft policy for further public input. So that'll be a key deliverable, one of the first key deliverables of the Smart City Master Plan. It's supported by 3 key strategies. So Mississauga is a city of the future. So what's that look like? Library digital transformation. So we just issued an RFP, or an expression of interest, to do a digital transformation of the entire library system. So this is very innovative. We're looking at the private sector coming and actually transplanting and pulling a whole new set of digital learning and digital experience tools into the library system across all libraries in the entire city. So that's very innovative as far as the city looking at transforming and finding a partner. We're also working on a 5G assessment for the city. We're concerned about the built environment, how it's going to play out in our community, how it can benefit the community. So we're actually working in partnership with local agencies, but also private sector on how that might come out in 2021. And we're also working on a couple other projects around the connected fleet. So our vehicles are all connected. They collect information. How can we use that to drive better decision making? The other important thing that came out, and you can cut me off, Mr. Moderator, if I'm taking too long.
This is okay.
Is under the strategy of Mississauga as a place for civic curiosity. The first thing we did was declare 5 living labs. And the reason we declared living labs was to acknowledge that digital is in the public realm. And for us to be successful, we need to be in those spaces and engage in the public. So we declared the 4 business improvement areas in Mississauga. So Malton, Port Credit, Clarkson, Streetsville, and downtown. And it's the boundaries of the BIAs. And that's where the heavy foot traffic is. That's where the people are. And that's where there's an opportunity for digital engagement. And so the complementary action to that is innovation challenges. That's the other thing we would declare is we would actually establish innovation challenges and publicly advertise those and engage the public and industry and respond to those. And these are going to be problem statements. And our first actually innovation challenge we'll announce in November, but I can tell you it's accessibility and inclusion. So it's not a challenge about traffic, or it's about how can we provide better services in the community, make them more accessible and more inclusive. So accessible could be multi-language, it could be addressing accessibility needs, so touch, different types of access to services. And inclusion could be making sure that there are services available to everyone, so we're providing more technology and more opportunity. The last piece really is about the smart city for everybody, and that really is making sure that we are looking across the entire city, not just these living labs, but across the entire city to make sure we're creating opportunity. So wireless Mississauga, and you mentioned the Wi-Fi at the front end. So we have Wi-Fi across the entire city. Last year, we did 8 million hours of free public Wi-Fi, so if you do the math, that's 900 years. That's pretty substantial. Wi-Fi is the new oxygen. It creates opportunity. And we know that not everyone has equal access, so that's why we do it. Our open data, so that drives innovation and opportunity. We continue to add new open data sets. The laptop lending program, which I just mentioned. Advancing our digital services, so we are the first and only city in Canada to actually partner with and have an agreement with Amazon for our website. So we're transforming our entire digital footprint in a very modern and agile way. So we have to make sure we continue that digital leadership for the city. And finally, the last important piece is digital engagement. So the city did a strategy on digital engagement, so we've adopted those actions as part of the Smart City Master Plan. So digital engagement is central to what we do, and that's part of the Center for Civic Curiosity. That is not bricks and mortar. That is a new program where we actually go into the community and we engage the community in topics. And our first topic was data and privacy. And so we held 3 workshops with the public on that. But we will continue. We'll actually find partners like Microsoft and actually go out and go to the community and provide access, direct access to things like augmented reality and artificial intelligence. And so the public is aware because there's not enough understanding. There's fear about these things. So we want to raise everyone's understanding and provide access to the community perspective things.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Shawn. And great opportunities for the students here at UTM to get engaged in some of the initiatives, whether it's the hackathon or the first problem-solving challenge that you're issuing around accessibility. And will schools be able to participate in that as well? Because that would be a great challenge for students.
So we're actually, our first innovation challenge, we're calling it a dress rehearsal because this is our first and it's fairly new. But our idea is to actually have the private sector respond because it is a RFP. It's actually a request for proposal. But we're partnered with UTM, Newcomers and Access, and we actually want to build a bit of a dream team. So our idea is that if a proponent or multiple proponents, companies, make a submission, they must pick from the dream team. And so the idea is they can pick from a student base, from newcomers and from access, and actually build that team so that people get opportunity and to learn as part of it. It really is doing R&D in a public space around solving a problem.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Problem-solving skills 101. I've got a big voice, so I can do it better. Yeah? Okay. So, back to Erin Mills Connects. What impact has Erin Mills Connects made on the John Fraser community and other member schools?
Kathy and I would like to talk about impact in 3 areas: students, parents, and the community. When we first began the organization almost 4 years ago, the stakeholders who came to our very first meeting, there were about 40 at that initial meeting, and since then we have checked in on a regular basis. We asked for, where would you like us to focus our energies? And there was an overwhelming feeling that health and well-being, specifically mental health, was a huge issue within the community and amongst children and youth. And so that's where we put our initial area of focus. So we were able to successfully obtain funding. We've applied for grants. We've received a Trillium grant and a number of other grants to support the initiatives that we have undertaken as an organization. And we have held 2 student events a year at which we bring together senior elementary students and high school students, 100 to 200 students, focused on awareness around mental health strategies. And every time we have an event, we have permission to get feedback on those events. So our post-event surveys have indicated that 80% of our students find that what we do is absolutely helpful to them, and 70% have indicated that more knowledge about mental health services and resources, they came away from our events far more informed than they were previously. So there's still room for improvement, but we're very happy with our initial results over the last couple of years. Kathy will talk a little bit more about impact on parents.
So the mental health for youth doesn't happen alone. It happens in the context of a family. So we try to provide events that support parents and guardians. So along with the youth events, we have a complimentary parent-guardian event, and we take some guidance from the parents in the exit surveys, what they want to hear about, and they want to hear more about social media, resilience, how to support their children and well-being. So we've had speakers, including Dr. Daw, who is one of the leaders in the Project Now program, which is trying to eliminate suicide among youth in this area, and it was announced last month. Some infusion from provincial coffers to support that initiative. And we feel that he spoke about resilience, but we feel that we are one very small part of that initiative in doing the community outreach and making sure that young people know what to do if they feel like they're in trouble. So, so with the parents, we provide them some support. We had Ann Douglas, a parenting expert, come in May. It was very popular, and she talked about parenting and how to be kind to oneself in the parenting role and not to be overstressed by social media. Surprise! It's also a problem for parents as well. So we have a number of speakers, and they're all suggested to us, or the theme is suggested to us by the people we're trying to help.
In terms of impact on the community, this community of Erin Mills is a really interesting community, because if you drive around the community, the impression that you have is that it's a middle-class, upper-middle-class community. But interestingly, it's not uniform. They are definitely pockets of poverty in the community, and also it's a very highly transient community. So as an organization, one of the things that we did was we tried to get a sense of, we wanted to better understand our community, and we actually approached the city of Mississauga, and we had city planners come and talk to us about, you know, what the future holds for this particular part of Mississauga. We also took a look at census data, and we discovered that 40% of the population in the neighborhood actually turns over every 5 years, and that the L5M postal code, which is the majority of the Erin Mills community, it has the largest concentration of children in Peel and the second highest number of families with 3+ children. So we found that statistic to be quite interesting as well, and therefore our focus on children and youth was an informed decision on our part. We also found that in speaking to parents and members of the community, because of the rapid turnover, they felt that there was a lack of community cohesion, a lack of connectedness. So in the work that we have done, we've also tried to bring parents together to develop more of a cohesiveness, more of a connection. So for example, at some of our parent events, we've had resource fairs, because parents were not, they might be very connected within their cultural group, but they were not necessarily connected across cultural groups and across the schools. They weren't necessarily informed about what resources there were for them as families within the community. So we have tried to work at informing our families and bringing together resources so that families can access. And we've gotten some very positive feedback about that. We have worked very hard to connect with Dr. Ian Daw, who's with Trillium Health Partners, who's working at Project Now within the city of Mississauga. His goal is to eliminate suicide in the next 10 years. And it is a team effort. He's bringing together both school boards, Peel Children's Center, and a number of other key stakeholders. We are also through, in a very small way, trying very hard to support that initiative by focusing on health and well-being of children and youth, and specifically mental health.
Thank you for that, Mary and Catherine. I'm curious as to whether you've been able to measure the academic impact on students before and after Erin Mills Connects.
I would say we probably haven't done that in terms of academics, but I know that the Erin Mills community, the parents that I have worked with through John Fraser Secondary School, are very focused on the importance of education. Education matters to them, so it was quite heartening for me to hear John Holmberg this morning talk about the importance of learning and the importance of education and how important that is. And if you look at the 17 sustainability goals that the United Nations has set, well, education is a very important goal within that 17, I would argue. And so within this community, bringing together the education community, which includes all the schools, but also UTM and a number of other institutions in the area, to work together. Education is the future of sustainability, I believe.
And I do know that the Erin Mills region is a highly desirable area to live, and there are parents that are clamoring to move in because of the academic success that all the schools have had in over the years, particularly. I want to leave some time for questions, so we're nearing the end of our questions, so think about your questions. It's always important to have a question, I tell my kids. So let's move to number 6 here. There's a perception that smart cities is more about technology, but what do you believe that Erin Mills Connects as a face-to-face organization? It's not an online community. It really actually is a face-to-face meeting group that you see once a month or so. What can that contribute to the focus on smart cities?
Erin Mills Connects really does operate on us listening to the people in Erin Mills and to the youth. The youth are also stakeholders, and I think we maybe missed that constituency. We do a lot of work with the people, and we do listen, and we do take their advice. And I think one of the things that all smart cities need is to make sure that they're listening to their residents. And a group like Erin Mills, which is across many silos, it has educators, it has parents, it has youth, it has residents who are just concerned, that we already exist to provide advice to Mississauga if they should need to know what about this next innovation. And so, Shawn, I encourage you to reach out to us and involve us as a local group in your discussions about what's going to happen with the smart cities.
So this is a really important question directed to the Erin Mills Connects team. Is this collaborative initiative scalable to other communities? And how would you recommend going about it?
We believe it absolutely is a replicable model. So if any of you represent a community out there where you'd like to give it a go, maybe you can stay back afterwards. We'd be very happy to talk to you. It already has been scalable in the sense that it went from Northwest Brampton to here, one community in Mississauga. But the the model that we represent of bringing everybody together, all the stakeholders, all the schools, and very important that the politicians be included. So we've had trustees come to our meetings, we've had city councillor come to our meetings. Very important that they also be involved. And that model, I believe, is replicable and can be moved into any other community.
Thank you for that. And so how do you see the connections based on Shawn's presentation today in terms of how you could interface in the future? And Shawn, feel free to jump in afterwards. This is directed at your MScSM group.
I think we can be a voice for our community with any development with smart cities.
I'd just add that, so when we started the Smart City Master Plan, we actually partnered with Erin and the opportunity equation was the baseline report that we used, and the opportunity equation actually was just re-released with current numbers. The data that we used to support our submission was based on a metric that was actually quite alarming. And that metric was, since 1970, the middle income had declined by 50%, and I'm rounding off, I think it was 52, and the low income had increased by 50%. So that's a pretty alarming metric, and that's not unique to Mississauga. That's across Canada. And so that's, to a lot of people, that's hidden. And so take it back to, it's about people and are these things scalable? So I think they are if you can partner. So that's an example. We partner with United Way. But I think the other thing is, internally within the city, we also partner. So with economic development, with the library, with culture, we try to make sure we're more impactful by collaborating amongst our shared initiatives. So as an example, our living labs were actually picked because that's where job intensification is happening in those communities. That's where the cultural nodes are. And that's where a lot of the opportunity is for growth and intensification from a planning perspective. So those locations were picked because of that collaboration and the review of our master plan.
Thank you for that. There's no question a smart, educated city is a thriving city. And equity comes into play. Right? And that's what you are addressing in both your organizations. Excuse me. So I've saved the toughest question for last. And are you guys ready for this? So if you could paint a picture of your ideal roadmap for the future, how do you imagine a thriving and sustainable smart city in Mississauga in 2025, given the many big city issues as traffic congestion, crime, and pollution? And this is directed at all of you. So a little crystal ball gazing, perhaps. Shawn, do you want to tackle it first?
So I think, so I'll start off with the city is in transition and transformation. If you look at the light rail transit development along the Huron-Terry corridor, it's going to drive a significant change along that part of the community. It's going to drive more intensification. And it is a direct initiative to address congestion and traffic issues for sure. And then the Dundas Connects, the Lakeshore Connects, or other environmental studies that are right now to get east-west light rail transit. So what does that mean? It means that because the environmental assessments have started, the typical timeline is 10 years to the shovel. So that's what's in our future, is now really looking at traffic and traffic congestion, priority transit. I think the other thing is Brightwater, the Brightwater development, which is ironically on the Petro lands down in Port Credit, which is a massive development. The master plan's been approved, it's starting. And then you've got the Lakeview development, which was on a coal burning plant. So here you've got two pretty dirty environmental things, both heavily focused on the environment, on sustainability, on resilience. Smart city is not the strong lens, but I can tell you I'm working with both those developments about creating opportunity and innovation, and it is about learning and really focusing on community. So I think by 2025 you're going to start to see a lot of change. We're a young city, relatively speaking, compared to, if you look globally. City Mississauga is 40x years old. There's a lot of growing left to do. So by 2025, I think you're going to start to see some change. But these things take a long time. And I think the most important thing is to have the plans in place, involve the community, and to make it happen.
So exciting. I hope to be around in the Port Credit area at that point when we see all that development happening. Catherine, over to you.
I think the most important thing is to have engaged communities, people who know what's going on and have a voice and can give feedback to the city. And not just the usual crowd, but people who may not normally be approached for their opinion. And I think that's what Erin Mills Connects offers.
Thank you for that. And over to you, Marion.
I think we have an exciting opportunity to come together. And I think the Erin Mills Connects model is a great example of bringing people together, schools, organizations, politicians, any community group, faith groups, individuals, parents, citizens, bringing people together for a common cause. And that common cause is our children and our youth. We need you. You're the future. So the question is, how can we, within the context of a smart city, support our young people, support our children so that they will thrive? What are the conditions that we can create that will allow individuals and communities to flourish? I believe that together we're better. So if we can create structures that allow people to come together, to work together for a common cause, and to have a voice, how much more powerful can we be? And to me, that's the future of sustainability. Sustainability can only happen if we are working together. So individuals and teams matter. And it was interesting to me to hear John this morning talk about issues like trust, listening, community, collaboration, creativity. Public education matters. And those things are at the foundation of a democratic society. And we are so very, very fortunate that we are talking and having a conversation about sustainability in probably one of the best countries in the world. And how fortunate are we to be here in this beautiful institution and where we are.
With that, thank you so much for that, Mary, Catherine, and Shawn, for your insight and passion and really making a difference and an impact in the city of Mississauga and beyond. It's never been a more exciting time, I said, to be in education and to be part of this community. And UTM has been a big part of it. I know I spend a lot of time here and collaborating with the master's program in sustainability. We hosted our conference here a year ago, and also being part of iCube. So my advice to the young people in this room is get engaged. By you being here, it's a great opportunity to build your resume, get experience, gain life skills. Future-proof is something that we talk about, future-proofing your skills. We talk about the 7 C's, and it's so important to be ready for what's coming, because you're creating the future. 12 years ago when I defended my thesis, I had an image of 2 students walking down a railway trestle in fog. I wish I had it here. And it said, we are preparing our students for a future that they do not know. Fast forward to today, I created a slide with kids in a makerspace that says, we are preparing our kids for a future that they will create. And that's all of you in here. So it's never been a more exciting time for you to be in this program and part of this conference. And now I'm going to turn it over. Let's have a round of applause for our panelists. And I think we have a bit of time for some questions. Does anyone have a question? They covered a lot of territory. Okay, so I'll over the mic. Introduce yourself.
Philippe Crabbe, University of Ottawa, formerly. One of you, I don't remember who, said that education is the future of sustainability. Well, it's certainly a necessary component because it affects values and worldview. The policy affects behavior, so don't rule out the carbon tax. that affects behavior, right? Second point, a political scientist from the US define democracy as being democracy is the running of the majority by the minority which cares. And that we have to remember that all the time. We work in the real world.
Thank you for that.
Good morning. My name is Kales. I'm with the MScSM program here at UTM. Thank you so much for what you offered. Sorry to come in a little late. My question is around this Erin Mills Connect project. And so we're talking about students, parents, and community, but then we're also talking, sorry, it's going to be bubbled like this, but I'm just looking for your perspective on it. So you're talking about students, parents, and community. Okay, wonderful. And then we're talking about middle, upper class with pockets of poverty in it. So I'm curious what analysis was taken into account for young people who maybe are not growing up in a single unit household without two stable parents, if that is addressed and looked at. And then we're also talking about mental health, and we're talking about connecting Wi-Fi into the city. Meanwhile, we have research out there talking about how Wi-Fi and the increased resonance of Wi-Fi is increasingly adding to mental health problems. So we've got all of these different projects that are happening and different niche pockets of people that we're looking at and engaging. And I'm not trying to diminish this, but in this effort of doing better and moving forward, how are we engaging in conversations that are looking at these different things that are seemingly otherwise in opposition to each other?
Thank you for that. Who would like to tackle that first? Mary?
I'll just comment that in terms of our stakeholders, we've had a broad reach. So we do have stakeholders, for example, polycultural immigrant and settlement organizations that are at the table. We're a very flat-lined organization. So we publish on our website when our general meetings are. Anybody can come. We also publish when our steering committees are. Anybody can be on the steering committee. So we invite a wide spectrum. So we have different organizations represented, schools represented. We actually have a registrar from UTM who's on our steering committee, and we also have a student represented on our steering. So we struggle with that, though, is that people who otherwise are living in certain pockets of poverty don't have the freedom of time and privilege of time to attend those spaces, let alone to attend confidence if they are in freedom, if they are functioning in themselves, to be able to show up into those spaces, let alone to speak. Yeah. What systems are we putting in place in order to really be engaging in a more diverse and critical conversation? Can you, no, it doesn't. Is it working? Okay, slightly. I can only say that we utilize the organizations and the schools that are at the table and we encourage them to reach out to their own individual constituencies, which represent the stakeholders in that community. So for example, any one school will have a diversity of population. Any organization will have a diversity. So you're right, all stakeholders won't be represented at our general meetings or our workshops or our parent evenings or our steering committee meetings, even though they're open to anybody. But we do make an effort to attract as much of a wide representation as possible, and we do rely on our stakeholders to take that information forward. We're a relatively young organization, only 4 years old, so we're learning as we grow. And we're trying very hard to leverage technology, for example, by having a distribution list, making sure that we have a newsletter that goes out that our stakeholders can then translate and send out to their own distributions. So we're trying very hard to get the information out as widely as possible, and we're also trying very hard to engage with broader issues within our community. and to listen to our stakeholders. So for example, mental health was clearly identified as a huge issue. And we're trying very hard to do our little part to support a much larger initiative within the city of Mississauga, which is Project Now. Kathy?
So, Kales, is it? Yeah. So we did a community consultation in January to see if we're on the right track still. If we need to pivot and put our attention somewhere else to address issues in Erin Mills. And our stakeholders said that we still needed to address anxiety and stress, use social media safely and responsibly, teach young or help young people do that, and understand and demonstrate resiliency. So those are the 3 top things that they suggested to us. And as you mentioned about the equity of young people being involved, the way we've structured it, because we do have a strong relationship with the 2 school boards that are in this area, the kids are chosen by their schools to come to field days, so it's in school time. They come and learn about mental health. And so it's not a matter of having time, you know, they have to go to jobs after work, after school, or have other things, or they can't get to a place. We pay for the transportation. The kids come and we provide lunch, and the kids get this free workshop, but it's like a field trip. So that we try to make that equitable. As far as other neighborhood, other like newcomers to our neighborhood, and we know there are a lot of newcomers in Erin Mills, we are going to pilot with university, or Western University, a project called Healthy Relationships Plus for newcomers. So it has the nuances of dealing with some of the communication problems that young people have with their parents or their guardians or with other people in their community. So it has those nuances built into this program that helps young people communicate more effectively with their parents or guardians and with their friends, so that, and on social media. So we're going to be piloting that project, and that's something that's unique to Erin Mills.
There's a lot of good things that have been said. I just wanted to add one other thing. So it is a bit of a challenge, and so we did a lot of public engagement. We did about 48 in the community events, a lot of online engagement, but then we partnered. So we met with the business improvement areas, United Way Access, and newcomers were the 3 groups we were really focused on, because we knew, so even though we have laptop lending and hotspot lending in the libraries, there's a segment of the population that's isolated, and so they're not going to go to the library. So what we've done is we've provided resource and access to resource to the people running newcomers and the people running access, so that they can connect with those who are isolated in the community and don't have a voice. And I think that's the strength of, you know, any kind of collaboration and organization is partnerships, is how you can extend the outreach. But in a lot of the cases, when you have a public event, you attract a lot of the same people. So back to the policy development, you really have to make sure you understand how much input you have through that engagement, but then you have to reach out further. And I think the answer to that really is finding the organizations that have access to those voices and reaching out to them.
The other thing that I'd like to mention is that I know that as a principal, I was very much impacted by both Brampton Northwest Connects and Erin Mills Connects. And what did I learn from those experiences? I learned that community matters. I learned that partnerships matter. I also developed a Healthy Schools Committee within 2 schools, both schools where I was a principal. And on that Healthy Schools Committee, I had teachers, I had students, I had public health nurse, plus school administration. So it was taking the Erin Mills Connects idea, but putting it into a microcosm, which was my school. And we focused through our Healthy Schools Committee on health and well-being, because we really believed that health and well-being was the key to everyone flourishing within the school. And we also focused very hard on mental health and well-being. So we had an overarching school goal that dealt with health and well-being, specifically stress management.
Hi, my name is Karina. I am an undergraduate student here at UTM studying environmental management and political science. So my question is directed to the Erin Mills Connects team. You mentioned that originally this was a program that was adopted in Northwest Brampton, so it was through Northwest Brampton Connects, and then it was transitioned to an older community in Erin Mills. So I wanted to ask, what were some of the differences that you observed in the general implementation and the structure between an up-and-coming community like Northwest Brampton and an older community like Erin Mills Connects, and as well as were there any challenges and potentially recommendations that you can make into how this project can be scaled to other communities?
I think, well, as a longtime resident of Erin Mills, I was surprised when Mary said, you know, there are a lot of things that your community is missing out on. And we were so happy with our education, our schools, and we didn't realize that we were disconnected because we did do a lot of interaction with our neighbors through schools. So I'm going to actually go pass it back to Mary to see what, as an outsider, what she saw in our established neighborhood that we were missing.
It was interesting. I'm glad that you asked that question, actually. Northwest Brampton had a sense of urgency. So it was a brand new community, no infrastructure, the houses went up. It was a part of Brampton that went from like 3,000 people to 50,000 people within the space of a few years. And so the schools were very much the hub of that community, but there was very little infrastructure. So Brampton Northwest Connects really was an answer to a number of issues. So Brampton Northwest Connects got grants for after-school programs, for example, play in the park programs. You know, there was interesting nuances to what we used the funding for that was really a crying need within the community. Move to an established community like Erin Mills, when I arrived as a principal, I was asking questions. So do you have any partnerships? No. You have a hospital within walking distance. Do you have a partnership with that? No. You've got a senior center down the street. Do you have a relationship with the senior center? No. You got a mall across the street. Well, the kids go there for lunch. Any relationship with the mall? No. So it was quite fascinating. And it was a mature community. I was actually shocked at how disconnected the community was. I was shocked. So you have silos, but nobody's talking to each other. And when we talk about sustainability, we better all start talking to each other. And so relationships matter, conversations matter, you know, listening matters, you know, trust matters. How can you have trust within a community if nobody's talking to each other, nobody's working together? So the approach was similar because it's emergent design. And I'm very comfortable with emergent design. I actually thrive in emergent design. I enjoy creativity. And emergent design happens when you have people together, and together you're creating, responding to need. And the needs are identified by people at the table. Have I answered your question?
Thank you so much for that, and thank you for a highly engaged panel. And I see partnerships potentially emerging out of this master's program in sustainability for some students to get engaged perhaps in research and projects. So I encourage you to stick around and have a conversation. With that, I believe lunch is up next. So thank you so much. Let's have another round of applause. And thank you.